الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا. All our teachers that which will benefit us and benefit us through what you have already taught us. وزدنا علما يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. And increase us in knowledge will bring us closer to you, O the most merciful of those who show mercy. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. So to proceed now, and we'll go into tafsir of Surah Al-Ikhlas. As you can see on the first page, it says introduction, a Makki surah with many names, known as the Surah of Divine Unity, Tawheed. So it says many names. What are the names of Surah Ikhlas? So the first one is Ikhlaas. And Ikhlaas means, and this is the one that the Prophet called it by, this is what it was known by at the time of revelation, as the name that's in the Quran itself, as the official name of Surah Al-Ikhlas, which is sincerity. It literally means, Ikhlas actually means to remove, to make pure. That's probably the better way. To remove impurities or to make something pure. Khalis means pure. Ikhlas means to make something pure. So khalis, this is a word some of you may be acquainted with. It means pure. So if I take the word here and write this for you, khalis. This has got the root letters kha, lam, sad. Anything with kha, lam, sad refers to something which is pure, untainted, unmixed. Ma'un khalis, pure water, meaning it's not mixed with anything, right? It can be used for anything that's not got a mixture, it's pure in that sense. So khalis means something which is pure, untainted, unmixed. The word we have for this name of this surah, which is Ikhlaas. Ikhlaas. Ikhlaas is the active form. So khalis means to be pure in of itself. Ikhlaas means to make it pure, to remove the impurities, right? So this is pure, untainted, right? That kind of meaning if you look in the dictionary, unmixed. This is to make pure, purifying, right? To make pure. But you'll find it translated as sincerity. So what has making something pure got to do with sincerity? As Imam Ghazali says, sincerity is to remove all other intentions and to have one intention. When we come to sincerity of worship, sincerity of action, devotion with sincerity, no motive should be there except one pure motive, which is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us as Muslims in our worship, that is Ikhlaas. So this surah is called Ikhlaas because this is what it helps you to achieve, and we'll talk more about that later inshaAllah ta'ala. So this is the name that was given to the surah by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It does have other names. The one name there is Tawheed. So the word mentioned for its first word, divine unity. The word Tawheed doesn't occur in the Quran, by the way. Although Tawheed is something we believe in and it's core to our faith and central, and it is mentioned in the Hadith, it's not something you will find in the Quran. It's not a Quranic word, Tawheed itself. But this means belief or worship, both of them, of one God, of one, let's say, deity. Right? It should have been capital, really, right? One deity there. So Tawheed, as we can see from this, is our action. We believe in one God. We worship one God, one object of worship. That is Tawheed, to single out one for your worship. Kind of remove everything else. Ikhlaas, remove all idols, all thoughts that we could think of, all meanings that we bring into the equation. Remove everything and worship the one God who's your creator. This is Tawheed. So it's, as it is linked to Ikhlaas. So Tawheed has a meaning of making one as well. It means it comes from Wahid, which means one. Tawheed means to make one, or to believe in this case. Obviously we don't make Allah one. Allah is one without us doing anything. But it's our belief that Allah is one that we need to achieve, that we need to understand. Another name for this surah is obviously, or well, slightly obviously, As-Samad. And that is one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it occurs in this surah and only in this surah in the Quran. And therefore, this surah is also known as Surah As-Samad. And we're going to talk about the word As-Samad in today's webinar, so we'll leave that for then. Another name for this surah is Al-Muqashqisha. Right, if I can write that. Al-Muqashqisha. Muqashqish or Qashqasha, which is where this comes from, means, again, they're all quite related actually. It means to, not just to purify or just to cleanse, but it means here to be very, when you shake something to get rid of something like that. This is Qashqasha. Qashqasha means like to cleanse and purify, but not in like a, get water or something. This Qashqasha is to really, with movement, with qashqasha basically, right? The word itself in Arabic, the words give an element of their meaning. This kind of onomatopoeia in English, as they say, right? That the word has a kind of, the sound of the word has an impact or a relation to the meaning, which is very common in Arabic. So qashqasha is not like just a simple cleansing or purifying. It's a fierce removal. Maybe that's what I'm looking for. It's a severe kind of way of removing things. And again, this is one that removes kufr. Al-Muqashqasha, the one that Prophet called it Al-Muqashqasha, the one that takes away and pushes out all forms of kufr, of shirk, of disbelief. This name is also actually given, is mentioned in the hadith as a name of Surah Al-Kafirun as well. Surah Al-Kafirun, Surah number 110, I believe, or 109 maybe, 109 or 10. One of those. I just can't count now. Going backwards from Surah An-Nas 14, Falaq 13, 12, Ikhlaas, which is Surah number 112 of the Quran, by the way, we're studying today. 111 is Tabbat, which is Masad, and then 110 is Idha Ja'a Nasr. 109, alhamdulillah, I was right, 109. So 109 is Surah Al-Kafirun, also known as Al-Muqashqisha, the one that removes, purifies, gets rid of, this works out the disbelief in this case, or in both cases. So these are some of the names of Surah Al-Ikhlaas. One other name actually, just to mention this, as I've noted down here, I should have mentioned it before, is Surah At-Tafreed. And Tafreed is not too different from Tawheed. It's actually quite similar. Tafreed can have two meanings. It means again to single out, singling out. It could also mean to do something alone, to do alone. Right? These are kind of meanings. Fard. Fard means individual, one, singular in Arabic. Tafreed means to make something one, to single one out, let's say. So we single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our worship. He's unique. So a fard is an individual. Fard means unique as well. Like individual is indifferent to everyone else. Allah is Al-Fardu Samad. Al-Wahid Al-Ahad. Al-Fardu Samad. He's actually mentioned as the name of Allah in the hadith. There's a hadith with this name, Al-Wahid Al-Ahad, which Wahid and Ahad we have in the Quran as well. And Fardu Samad we have as well. Samad we have in the Quran as well. Fard we may have in the Quran, I'm not too sure. I'm not really researched into that name in the Quran, but it is mentioned in the hadith, Al-Fard. Allah is the unique. He has no partner, no likeness. So again, it's very similar to Wahid, Ahad, Samad, as we can see here. So this is Tafreed, is the name of this surah as well. So that's some of the names we've got for Surah Al-Ikhlaas. I think Surah Al-Ahad may be a name, I'm not 100% sure. But nevertheless, we'll move on to this. We'll jump slightly from the document. It says here, virtues, cause of revelation is where we're going to go next. I think that's a good place to start. Because I could talk about the third of the Quran in a moment. So on your handout, on your PDF, it says cause of revelation, the third point down. It says the polytheists came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him to describe for them his Lord. Is he made of gold or silver? What is his lineage? Unsub lana rabbak, right? Give us your lineage of your Lord, they said. Nisbah. Give us the nisbah, the connection, the link. Where's your God from, right? Because our gods, where does this come from? They're polytheists, right? Our gods are made of wood. Somebody so and so brought our God from this tribe. So and so made it from this tribe. So and so. Ridiculous to say that, but people who have that belief don't find it ridiculous. That's the psychological state of people. They believe in their gods and they worship them, and this is what Islam removed. This is Tawheed. This is Surah Ikhlaas. If you have this in your life, you won't have that. You'll be purified of that. So this is what we're talking about. Say purifying ourselves of shirk and disbelief. We find it odd that somebody would worship a piece of wood or metal, but it wasn't odd at the time, and it's not odd for people who do that right now. Um, you know, and that's why it's blasphemous for them that we believe in Tawheed, and it's blasphemous for us that they believe in multiple gods, right? So religions will differ, and of course they will, if they are opposing or contradicting beliefs, then obviously that's blasphemy in both directions, right? But we are taught to live and tolerate other faiths, even with their disbelief, and with their shirk and polytheism, etc. And the Muslims did live like this, and the books of Islamic law have given us the guidelines to have a vibrant, healthy, productive, tolerant, peaceful society. Hence, the fact that it's blasphemy and we don't like it, and for them it's the other way around, is just part of life. It exists in belief systems. You're going to have contradictions, and we need to learn to live to accept those. Accept them as in, tolerate them as a reality that exists, not accept them as in we believe in them or we assume them as our beliefs. No, we reject them in that sense, right? So this is an important point. We reject all of these ideas of shirk, polytheism, blasphemies, etc. But if they are part of somebody else's faith, if they're an attack on Islam, then we don't accept that at all. But if they're just part of somebody else's faith, they believe in a Trinity, they believe in idols, they worship, some human being, then, like I said, we reject it as a belief system. We reject it as an act of a valid act of worship or whatever. But we have to, the fact that it exists and people do it in the world, it's tolerated, right, in the outward sense. I hope that makes sense. And we live in harmony, and if that exists, it exists. And like, even if Muslims were to rule a land, they wouldn't wipe that out, right? That's not necessarily the case, and it wasn't the case. Whenever the Muslims went, they allowed the people to keep their worship, whatever it was. So the reason of revelation, therefore, is the fact that a group of polytheists in Mecca came to the Prophet ﷺ, asked him, where is your Lord from? Give him his nisbah, and so forth. So this is called the sabab al-nuzul, or the reason for revelation. In one report, so in some, if you look in the tafsir books, it says this is Surah Makkiyah, which means it's revealed in Makkah. And some reports says Surah Madaniyah, which means it was revealed in Medina. Why? Because in some reports, sound reports as well, to be honest, in the books of tafsir is mentioned, it was the Jewish people in Medina who asked the Prophet ﷺ about your Lord, describe your Lord. And for that reason, the response is to everyone, it's for every single person reading the Quran. So is it for the kuffar of Makkah? And some explain it that it's like Surah Al-Kahf when it was asked by the Jews of, the question was asked by the people of Makkah, but they were told to ask the question by the people of Medina, the Jewish people of Medina, about the people of the cave, about the Ruh, and about Dhul Qarnayn. These were the three questions that are revealed in Surah Al-Isra or Bani Israel 17 and Surah Al-Kahf, the cave, 18. The answers to these two questions, three questions, were mentioned in these two surahs. Where was the question from? Where did the polytheists get this question from? They didn't. They didn't make the questions up. They got the questions from the Jews. And so similarly here, where did this question come from? Was it something that the kuffar themselves asked? It could have been, because it doesn't require you to get this from the Jews. Yeah, it could have been the Jews that asked it as well. So there's narrations, reports from both these groups of people. So it could have been revealed in Mecca, it could have been in Medina. Some say it was revealed twice, once as an answer to these group of people, and then once as an answer to the second group of people. In one report, it says in the tafsir books, the Prophet actually shook at this question. Like I said, we're not designed to expect somebody to ask, is God made of gold or silver, or has he got a lineage? He shook in it like he was taken aback, and really was, uh, totally shaken, like not shaken as in, scared or anything, but really like shocked in a sense that how can somebody ask such a question? Um, it was, so it's not normal for us to, so although we're speaking about it now, it's saying, look, God, is he made of gold, silver? It's just not, it doesn't sound right, as you can see. Um, so this is the reason behind the revelation as you have it there, that the question was asked. And in response, this surah was revealed. So Surah Al-Ikhlas, Qul, hence the first word is Qul. Whenever we have the word Qul in the Quran, Qul means say. It's a command. So this is important to note, by the way, for all the Qul surahs and so forth, if we note it down here. When you have the word Qul, those of you who speak Arabic will know this means say. It's a command verb, and it's for the second person, so that means you're speaking to the person. Singular and male, masculine. Right, so if you're speaking to a boy, man, etc., male person, and you want them to say something, to speak, to just have some kind of saying, you'd say Qul. So Allah is saying Qul. These are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is the one addressed? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Say in brackets, hence you'll find say O Muhammad, say O Prophet. In the tafsir, in the translations, you will find this sometimes. Who is the one commanded? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the one that is commanded to speak to us and to say these words. Now, is it to us? Well, it depends on the question. It depends who the response is to. So often it was for the Muslims, and they say, yas'alunaka anil ahilla. They ask regarding the new moons. Qul, say. They are, timings for your Hajj and your etc. Right? It mentions here mawaqitun. They are times or measurements for timing, etc. The moon, the phases of the moon. They ask you about etc. etc. There's various questions that were posed by the Sahaba, and Allah mentions them in the Quran. Yes, alunaka. They ask you. They're asking you about these things. Qul, say. In this one, there's no yes alunaka. It's just a straight response. Qul. Huwallahu ahad. Say, O Prophet, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, my messenger to the people, to the group of people that are asking you this question about lineage, about God, who is he, etc. Say to them, say the following words, and then the rest of the surah is an address by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, therefore, to the disbelievers of Makkah primarily, and to anyone who asked that question, if the Jews did, which is reported, and to anybody reading, listening. They are being addressed by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is how Allah works, by the way. Allah doesn't address the kuffar. Allah does not address, Allah doesn't say, don't, or do this, do that, or Allah doesn't address the kuffar, apart from I think 2 places in the Quran, or maybe 1 place or 2 places in the whole Quran itself. So Allah, in His infinite wisdom, decided not to address the kuffar, like a direct address to the disbelievers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided not to do that. So He gets His Prophet to speak on His behalf to the disbelievers. So this surah is an address by the Prophet ﷺ to the disbelievers, and that's why it was revealed. So we've done the cause of revelation. Let's go back a step and go to the virtues. So it's in the virtues. Abu Darda reported, Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, is any of you incapable of reciting a third of the Quran in a night? They said, how could one recite a third of the Quran in a night? Upon this he said, ﷺ, Qul huwallahu ahad is equivalent to a third of the Quran. Qul huwallahu ahad is equivalent to a third of the Quran. Qul huwallahu ahad. Ta'adilu is equivalent to, is representative of thuluth al-Quran, a third of the Quran. So what does that mean? The most common opinion regarding that is it has a reward of reciting a third of the Quran. So that's what the Prophet, in a sense, was saying. Can you not recite a third of the Quran? How can I recite a third of the Quran? That's a lot. If you recite Surah Al-Ikhlas, it's equivalent. He didn't say it is exactly, because it's not. A third of the Quran is exactly a third of the Quran. It's, 10 jaza or 10 sapari. But if you recite Surah Ikhlas, you get the virtue of the reward of reading a quarter of the Quran. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is as follows, that the Quran is split into um, three categories. One is Tawheed, which is anything to regard with belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second is Ahkam, rulings, which is anything to do with a ruling or so forth. And the last then is Qasas, so beliefs. I'm doing Arabic, sorry, we'll change that. So Tawheed, we'll do it in Arabic as well now. You've got oneness of Allah, rulings, and stories. So if you look at the Quran, it contains these three elements. In Surah Al-Ikhlas, we find the following covered, right, which is equivalent therefore to 1/3 of the Quran, right? The other 2/3 are what? Ahkam, rulings, guidelines. This comes anything, etiquettes, all that kind of thing. They're rulings. Etiquette is a ruling. And you got stories, Qasas al-Anbiya, of the previous prophets, of the Qarnayn, of the cities, of so and so. Strike for them the parable of so and so, and these kind of stories or metaphors, etc. That kind of narrative that you find in the Quran. So it contains, Surah Ikhlas contains and summarizes Tawheed, beliefs. What we believe is this, Alhamdulillah. So this is some of the virtues of this surah. Another virtue of this surah, which is not mentioned here, which I will mention, is the fact that on one occasion the Prophet ﷺ sent a group of Sahaba somewhere, and the leader, I don't remember his name, he would lead the prayer, the salah, and he would in every rakat, every time he read the prayer, he'd read Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas, and then read some of the Quran. So normally what do? We read Surah Al-Fatiha and then Surah Al-Kawthar. Surah Al-Fatiha in the next rakat, Surah Ikhlas. The third rakat, Surah Fatiha, Surah Falaq, or whatever Surah Asr, Surah Ayat Al-Kursi we might read the shorter, longer Surah, like part of Surah Mulk if you know it, or part of Surah Yasin if you know it, or just a few ayat from the Quran. What this individual, this Sahabi, did was he read Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Ikhlas, Surah Fatiha, Surah Ikhlas. That was just his standard recitation. And then he would add some of the Quran. So he'd recite Surah Fatiha, Surah Ikhlas, and then Surah, Al-Fil. He'd recite Surah Fatiha, Surah Ikhlas, and then Surah Al-Ma'un or Al-Kafirun. So he'd always make a part of his actual recitation Surah Al-Ikhlas. This wasn't normal, and this isn't how you pray, and this is not how we've learned to pray, and the books don't teach this. And the Sahaba obviously knew that this isn't how you pray the Salah, so they complained. They said this isn't how you read it. He didn't listen to them, so they went and complained to the Prophet ﷺ that we went with this person, and every time he read the prayer, he read Surah Ikhlas, Surah Ikhlas. He didn't leave it. He read Fatiha and Ikhlas and something else. So he wouldn't ever leave Surah Ikhlas, and we didn't know that was something that you should do, and you haven't taught us this. And the Prophet ﷺ asked for this person. And he came forward and he was asked the question, what made you read Surah Ikhlas all the time in your prayer? What was the driving factor for this? And he said, because I love it, O Messenger of Allah. I love this surah. It describes our Lord to us. It's enough for us, this surah. So I love this surah. So the Prophet ﷺ replied to him, your love for this surah has caused you to enter paradise. Your love for this surah and what you've been doing and your attachment to Surah Al-Ikhlas has granted you paradise, right? So the attachment to this surah in the Quran shows you how powerful it is, how strong it is in bringing tawheed and oneness into the heart of a person, that this person was granted this glad tiding of In the actual hadith, he says, ask him why he recites so much. He said, I love it because this is a description of Ar-Rahman, and I love to recite the description of Ar-Rahman. And then he was given the glad tidings by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is one other virtue which is, well, a couple of virtues here I've got in this particular book I'm reading from. But the one I was going to mention was the fact that in a narration, which I don't know where it is, Tirmidhi, I think, Imam Tirmidhi relates that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever recites Surah Ikhlaas 10 times, a palace in paradise is built for that person. So if you recite Surah Ikhlaas 10 times, you get a house, a palace in paradise. So Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, anhu, the great companion, he said, oh, Messenger of Allah, we'll do more and more and we'll get more and more, you limit it, how can you just do this? We'll have too many houses in paradise because we can keep on doing more and more and more and more. In a sense, we can do more, we'll do so much. And the Prophet ﷺ replied, Wallahu akthar, and Allah will do more. Allah is more, Allah will give more. So don't worry, if you want to do it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, million times, don't worry, Allah will give you that much houses and palaces and so forth. Don't worry, don't limit it. In other words, you can't limit it. This is the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is one of the virtues given to Surah Al-Ikhlas as per the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So then let's go back to the top, which is actually the introduction. So sorry to go back in reverse order. It says Tawheed or monotheism. Now they're going to the top of the page. It's Makki Surah with many names, known as the Surah of Divine Unity Tawheed. So what is Tawheed? We did touch upon this. It says Tawheed or monotheism forms the basis of the religion of Islam. Like Tawheed is our core characteristic of our beliefs. The Prophet said every religion has a trait, and the trait of Islam is. This question for everyone actually. What's the trait of Islam? Anybody know? It's not Tawheed. So anybody know this hadith? Every religion has a trait and the distinguishing feature, let's say. And the distinguishing trait feature of Islam is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, jazakumullah khairan, haya, modesty. It is modesty. Jazakumullah khairan. It is haya or modesty, right? Modesty. The trait that is for everyone is the trait of modesty. This is the trait of Islam. So Islam brings forth modesty. It's where everything faith stems from modesty. The Prophet said, "Al-haya'u khayrun kulluhu." Haya is beautiful, all of it. Haya brings beauty with it. Modesty. Shyness is a word used. You could get away with that translation. Modesty is much better, I think. Bashfulness, that kind of thing. But this beautiful trait of restraining yourself and realizing what's around you, because with modesty comes awareness of God, awareness of the surroundings. It comes with it faith, like, why are you doing this? It's a driving factor to do things and to avoid things, right? So that's kind of what it builds the faith in. It builds your taqwa. So taqwa and haya are related. So this was mentioned in the hadith. But when it comes to our beliefs, so this is in the religion as a whole is the hadith. When it comes to our beliefs, the distinguishing factor, not as a hadith per se, but as definitely a quality that the Prophet came with. He came with Tawheed because obviously in his time, shirk or the opposite of Tawheed, the contradiction of Tawheed is polytheism, monotheism, polytheism. And that was prevalent at the time. That was widespread and had spread throughout Arabia. It wasn't there previously. It had come, not too long before the Prophet himself, by a person called Huyay. What was his name? Amr ibn Luhay. His name was. So this person was the person responsible. His name was Amr ibn Luhay. This was his name. Sorry to write that really badly. If you try in English. Amr ibn Luhay. With the tashdid and the ya. He was Arab from, I think, one of the tribes. He went out to I think he went westwards, somewhere towards the Byzantine Empire, and they were Orthodox Christians, but among them, I don't think it was the Persian side he went to. Among them, there was idol worship, where he found people worshipping idols, and he thought, this is nice, let's take this. And he took it back took an idol back, piece of wood, a piece of something, and he started telling people to worship it. This is our God. This is we should worship it. We should ask it for things. It'll give us. And this the whole simple thing, but weird thing of idol worship started, and obviously that became business. People then wanted to buy idols and pay them homage and da 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 da, and kind of idol worship became a business, and it became quite uh, a good profit in it and a good commerce. So there was big business in idol worship, by the way. If you look at the Seerah, life of the Prophet ﷺ, why were the Quraysh so against monotheism? Because to remove polytheism would remove business. Yeah, it sounds weird. It's not. So they weren't so just like firm on their beliefs. They were worried about something more important than their beliefs. Actually, money, dunya. Right? This is really the destroying factor for them. They wanted power, status, wealth, and polytheism was what they thought was granting them that. Right? So they thought that's it. What they were told by their wise people themselves, and what they should have realized, and some of them did actually, and advised the Quraysh, is that monotheism is going to take over. What he's brought, Prophet Muhammad has brought, is going to lead the peninsula, the Arabian Peninsula. So follow it, submit to him, let him be your leader, because he's going to lead you anyway. He's going to take. They saw the dominance of the Prophet ﷺ, what he's brought with him, but obviously they didn't want to submit to that or take that advice, so they didn't take heed. And in the end, those predictions actually came true. Polytheism was wiped out of the Arabian Peninsula, most of it, 99.99%, and Tawheed prevailed, monotheism prevailed in the form of Islamic monotheism, of course, Islam. That's not just a belief we have, there's many more beliefs that make us Muslims, but monotheism is part of it. So this is what we are now on, Tawheed, right? So Tawheed is something very important to the whole equation. So that's our introduction. I've got my stylus, I'm going to pick that up. Oh, Bismillah. Right, so we've had our first session really. I want to do the introduction and then spend 2 sessions each on 2 ayat each and leave any remaining time for questions. So what we'll do is a good time to have a break, and this is about 6-7 minutes before 3 p.m. We'll resume at 3 p.m. inshallah ta'ala. So it's like a 6-minute break, I think. It's about 2:54. So we'll just pause here. There'll be no sound and there'll be no video, so we'll cut them off for the time being. Questions are welcome during the break. That's the questions, or send them in as you want. Send them in privately. Those of you know how to work with, if you're on the desktop, I don't think it's available on the app, but if you're on the desktop, you hover over my name, if you can see it there, and it's options that say private chat. You can send private messages. Some of you already done that today, mashallah. Or you can just put your question in this chat box here, and we'll get to your questions at an appropriate time. And at the end, we'll leave some time for Q&A as well, because there might be questions that arise and we'll deal with them. So we'll have a break now. We'll come back, and your questions are welcome during the break, and we'll address them, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum to everyone once again, and welcome back. We will now continue with the tafsir of Surah Al-Ikhlaas. Just a question that says, what were the traits of the other nations? I don't know. The hadith just says every nation had a trait, every ummah had a trait, and the trait of Islam is haya. Wallahu alam what the traits of the other ummahs were. Ayah number 1. So we're going to move on to the tafsir of Surah Al-Ikhlaas. So it says, ayah number 1. Islam teaches us that only Allah is divine and worthy of being worshipped. Allah says, there is Allah your Lord. There is no God but He, the creator of all things, then worship Him. In Surah number 6, Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 102. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Say, O Muhammad, as we can see there, this is addressed to the Prophet ﷺ, to the polytheists, that my Lord who I worship and the Lord to whom I invite you to worship is one. He has no partner, sharik, no similar, shabih, no example, nazir, or nazir with a dha, not in his essence, attributes, nor in his actions. He is not as the Christians perceive him as a trinity, and neither that which the polytheists ascribe to him is befitting for him. So the first reply, or the first point we have here is, Qul huwa Allah. Say, my Lord is, He is Allah, that's his name. Ahad, he is one. So the word ahad is mentioned here. And what does the word ahad therefore mean? And the word ahad is usually used in the Arabic language, and it's actually only really used in the Arabic language, for a negative sentence. And we have that at the end of this surah, which is where it says, وَلَمْ يَكُلْ لَهُ كُفُوًا ahad. And there is not, so the negation, anyone, ahad, right? So that's the last ayah. You say, ما في ما أحد في الدار, ما في أحد. There is no one. In Arabic, this is a common expression to use ahad in a negative sentence. So using ahad in an affirmative sentence to state something is not the norm. So it being used here is to show that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unique. And what does ahad mean here? Explains it as follows. It says Allah being attributed with oneness comes in three different meanings. Number one, there is no second to him. There is no sharik. That was the first thing mentioned above. There is no sharik, no partner. So negating multiplicity. There's no second God. Number two, nothing resembles him. La shabih, which is the word above, no similar, no resembler. Negating a peer or an equivalent. What that means is, okay, there's no second God, but all the things in creation, like humans, like angels, do they have any similarities to God? Do they have any powers that God has, abilities that God has? Descriptions of God can be applied to anything of the creation, or the other way around. Can a human being or a description of an angel be a description of God? The answer is a categorical no. There is no resemblance in any way, shape or form between Allah and His creation. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. There is nothing that has the likeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. Right? Surah 42, ayah number 11. And then it says, He is not subject to division, negating Trinity and composition. So there's no one Godhead made of three parts. God Himself is not an object that can be divided. He's not a composite. Composite is when you have molecules or parts making a larger singular body, but Allah is not a body or a composite being. That's not His existence. He's not like that. He is Allah. So how is He? What is He? We can't answer that question. We don't have that. He's unique. He's one. He has no partner. So as you can see, what we're doing is we're negating. You see, because to say Allah is this is just very hard to understand. And that's not how the human mind cannot fathom or comprehend Allah Almighty as He is. Right? What we can learn from is to take away Ikhlaas, remove everything, to get the purity. Remove all the things that do not apply. Get rid of everything that is incorrect. Multiplicity, resemblance, parts, needs, lack of something. This is not what befits Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His divine attributes. So this is part of our tawheed, our worshipping Him as one, and His wahdaniyah, by the way. So let me make a point here that the oneness of Allah, which we're talking about here, is not tawheed, funnily enough. The oneness of Allah we're talking about here is what they call wahdaniyah. Wahdaniyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has wahdaniyah. Allah doesn't have tawheed. Because what did we say tawheed was? Making something one, worshipping something as one, believing something as one. Human beings or monotheists have tawheed. This is a sukun. Wahdaniyah is oneness of God. Unicity, unity, whatever you want to call it. That Allah is one. Allah is unique. Allah has no partners. Allah has no resemblance. This is the wahdaniyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, so this is an attribute of Allah. A very core attribute of Allah. Right, as we said, tawheed for us as Muslims is the removal of shirk. That's taking away that. Wahdaniyah for Allah is not a removal of anything. It's who He is as one. Okay? It's not a removal. It means to be one, not to take away anything and make one or believe one or worship one. That's tawheed. Wahdaniyah means to be unique, to be one, to be alone. It's the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for us to understand the wahdaniyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we've been taught in a way of removal, of negation, of not believing this, not believing this, not affirming this, not accepting this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those three things are mentioned. And then it says below in the next page, continues in the same kind of manner. It says He is one in His essence. So there's only essence meaning the reality of Allah. Allah is one. That reality has no second reality. So another God, again, multiplicity can't occur. Same as number one above. But it's just expressing it in a different way. Attributes. Nothing resembles Allah. Okay, Allah has divine attributes. Allah has descriptions. Nobody has those descriptions. So He's alone in His knowledge, power, and all attributes. Somebody could say, there is a similarity here though, isn't there? Like you said, Allah's got knowledge. I can say Ahmed has got knowledge. I can say, you can say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. And I can say this for Ahmed or James or Abdullah, whoever, right? There is a similarity. Look. So are those attributes of the creation? Remember, all these words are descriptions, adjectives, actions as well, I suppose, which is the next part. Then are they the same for Allah? Or what's the difference? It seems like they're the same. When I say Allah is merciful, and I say, my father, my mother is merciful, isn't that the same? The categorical answer is no, they are not the same. Nope. Yes, the English word and indeed the Arabic words are even the same, but as in language, you can have one word which has multiple meanings. Now the word power or qudra for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah being al-qadir, the all-powerful, applies to Allah in such a way and such a meaning that meaning has no resemblance, let alone other than the word itself, other than no resemblance, no share whatsoever with the power, the same word we use for a human and what it means for a human. So for what do I mean? Look, power for a human is intellectual strength, brain power, right? It's physical muscles, it's physicality, it's dominance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have power in that way. إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. If he wants something, his affair is such that he says be and it is. He doesn't have to think about it. There's no intellectual power. There's no physical, muscular strength. That Allah's qudra is not the thing that you could ever understand from a human or created form of power, or the form of powers, let's say, that we are acquainted with. It's not an energy that Allah uses. It's not like electricity He's got stored up, or this kind of way of expressing power or energy or strength, etc. That whole concept in created terms does not apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, the word is the same, but anything that you understand from power for a human being cannot be applied to, or any created being cannot be applied to Allah Almighty, our Creator. So He is different in His attributes and actions, is what it says. Allah is only His divine actions. Only He provides, gives life, and causes death, etc., etc. Everything is only whatever Allah does. Again, if somebody else does share that, so we help, Allah helps. You can use both words for creation and the Creator, but there's a significant and absolute complete difference. And we should go to the level of saying there's a contradiction even between the two, and that's how we should actually say it. It's not like there's the two things on a spectrum. Like let's show you this, right? It's not like this is the spectrum of power, right? Spectrum of power, right? It's not like humans are here, human, and angels are here, let's say, and whatever, and Allah is here, right? At the end, I won't even write it, right? But Allah is not on a spectrum of created power. This is creation, right? If contradictions, by the way, don't exist together, so the contradiction cannot be on a spectrum. So this here cannot be, let's put it on the thingy. Right? This here is not a contradiction to this. It's different to it. It's opposite to it. It's not contradiction. What does that mean? It means this can exist and that can exist. Okay, for humans it's this one, so it won't exist in angels, and for angels it's that one, right? The two powers are different, yeah, but they're not contradictions. They're on a spectrum. Allah's power doesn't exist on a spectrum. It doesn't exist in a way, shape, or form that we can recognize from the creation. So it's a contradiction to all of this. Let me give you another example, right? Two things that are on a spectrum, like this is the spectrum of sitting down. Yep. On this spectrum, you can have all different postures of sitting down. Now, what's a contradiction to this is anything that is not sitting down. These are all contradictions. Okay, so what are they? Lying down, reclining, I don't know, swimming, standing, right? Can you, any one of you here, place one of these words? I'm not really bad, I'm not really bad job of them, but any of these so-called words, lying down, standing, swimming, can you place them on this spectrum of sitting down? Where do they fit here, right? Where can you place these on the spectrum of sitting down, right? You can't. To place this in here is a contradiction. It can never be on that spectrum. So going back to our idea here, all human um, attributes and actions are on a spectrum, and they all exist in this world and time and limited. God's actions and God's attributes don't exist on that same spectrum. They're not on that spectrum. They're contradictory to that. So you could never fit them in or liken Allah to His creation or any similarities and so forth. Right? They're just totally of another. So what is that? What are Allah's attributes and actions, and how does that work? Like I said, we don't have access to that. We just have names of them. We have some access. So the power of Allah is what He creates with. We know Allah decides. He has irada. إذا أراد شيئا, when He wants to do something, right? This is not a human volition. It's not something that goes through a thought process and I think, I decide. We can't mirror that onto or reflect that onto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, like, this is what I understand from human decision making, therefore God decision making, or in God's decisions, or His will is like that, right? We can't start defining God through human explanations or understandings. So this is important. This is Tawheed. This is us negating from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's wahdaniyya of Allah, like you said, that's Him. But for us to approach Allah is Tawheed. And then it says, after that point there, it says, the main purpose of this surah is to refute the ideology of the polytheists. The Quran has presented many proofs for the oneness of Allah among the proofs in the Quran. So these are arguments Allah Himself presents. And there is a debate amongst Muslim scholars about the concept of debate itself and theological arguments, rational arguments, dialectics, and should we open the door to this? The Prophet ﷺ didn't really have sort of, these sort of what we could call them debates or discussions or logical arguments, like this kind of thing. He was very to the point, believe in one God, worship Allah, and there were things presented as arguments. If you look at throughout the Quran, reflect over the creation of the heavens and the earth, and look at the signs in yourselves and in the creation, in wildlife, and this kind of thing, in animals like the ant and the bee, and we learn many things from these, and we do see great order, great design, which does lead us to a designer, creator, an intelligent being, if you can use that word, for this universe, for this creation. And we find that it doesn't come randomly. It's not haphazard. It's not just a storm that produced, I don't know, gardens and rivers and buildings and aeroplanes, right? It's just not possible for that to happen. So how did this world come about? There must have been somebody who made it, right? So there is an element presented within the Quran and Hadith, which is those scholars that are for logical argumentation and rational proofs and that kind of thing, use as a basis for their discourse, and it's existent in the Islamic tradition, in Aqidah, in Islamic creed. There is Islamic theology. There is this concept of logical, rational arguments, and they are presented in some way in the Quran. So if we look at these examples, it's actually a rational, logical, theological arguments presented by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran Himself. So it says, number one, the act of creation. So Allah presents His oneness in these three ways in the Quran. Number one, the act of creation. This is by means of creating and bringing into existence the universe from nothingness. Allah says, is He equal, the one who creates and the one who does not? So if you're looking for a creator, if you're looking at, the fact that there is creation, then there must be a creator. Now, if you're looking at the fact that there's a creator, can there be more than one creator? This is the logical discussion which the scholars have clearly outlined and defined. Muslim and non-Muslim scholars, so monotheistic scholars, or those who believe in monotheism, they present clear logical arguments that if you believe in the existence of a creator, then you must by default believe in a the oneness of that creator. There can't be multiple gods, basically, if you believe in a creator. And those arguments are presented. That in itself is, contained within that statement. So if you believe in a creator, you believe it must be one, full stop. Okay, what's the argument? How, why? So Allah does touch on that argument in the Quran himself. And obviously, in terms of theology, you can get a full, blown out discourse, which will take some time to go through and understand. But it's in the books of Islamic creed and theology, and that you can find that discourse. But in the next ayah, Allah says, designing creation, which I mentioned earlier, the design found in the creation show He is the sole creator of this harmonious creation. Allah says in the Quran, if there was a God besides Him in them, fihima, in them too, in the heavens and the earth, la fasadata, they both would have been corrupt, ruined, destroyed. So what Allah is saying is, if there had been two creators or two gods that existed, everything would have been none. You can't have two. And simply put, you have to have two creators, you need them to agree. If they disagree, they're not going to create anything, right? Let's say they're both equal in power, first of all, because if one's powerful than the other, then one's the creator and one's subdued by the other, he's got control. But if they're both equal in power, which is impossible, right? So we're giving you a fallacy here, a logical argument. But let's look at the result of believing in this, or taking that hypothetical situation of two equal gods. Okay, if they disagree and they're equal in power, remember they're disagreeing. How can anything be created? I want to create earth. I don't want to create the earth. I want to create Zayd. I don't want to create Zayd. I want it to be morning. I don't. They're disagreeing. So how can anything be occurring if they're equal in power? Because this, one can never outdo the other. It's like a scale. No one is going tipping the balance. So nothing will happen. By default, nothing will happen. So it won't be the one that doesn't want it to happen wins and nothing happens, because it might be that he wants to create something and he doesn't, and he wants to create something and he does. Whatever they want will never happen, because there's always an opposing, hypothetical opposing power that denies that. So nothing gets done. Okay, let's take the situation where they agree, right? Why can't they agree and we can have, creation? Okay, so person A wants to, God A wants to create Zayd. God B agrees to the creation of Zayd. Okay, question: who created Zayd? If God A created Zayd because he's the one who wanted to, and he just needs the agreement of B, then he didn't actually do anything other than give an agreement. The actual act of creation can only be attributed to one God in of itself. So once there's an act of creation, it can't. This is basically the logical concept of two effects on one thing at the same time cannot occur. So I'll give you an example that is mentioned in the books. If you have, it can occur, but no, it can't occur. But in this example, you might say, oh, it could, but it can't. Logically, it can't. What's the example? If you have a nail and you get two hammers and you try to strike that nail at the exact same time, only one hammer can strike the nail. The other hammer will come on top of the other one. So really, it's only this one hammer that creates, that does the initial effect. Then what you're saying is a second effect by another God. Well, why do we need the God for to have a second effect? Where do you get the idea from? Is his effect more powerful than this God? Is it equivalent to this God? What is it there for? Only one pen can write in one space at one time. You can't have two pens on the same space. You can have them next to each other. So like I was going to say with the nail, you can have them striking half the nail each because the nail has a head, right? But as in a complete, unique act of creation, only one creator can do that at one time. So it doesn't make sense to have, it's illogical to have multiple creators, because then which one is the actual creator, which one has the power to create, and which one's aiding the creator? If he's aiding it, then does he have the power to create in the first place? Without aid, there's a need. Is that divinity that God has needs? Is it divine that God needs help, or he shares his kingdom? So this whole concept of multiple gods results in a lot of problematic situations, fallacies, and just downright silly ideas that just don't fit with divinity. Not just oneness of the divine, just divinity itself doesn't. Divinity is all-knowing, all-powerful. Divinity is not having a need, a partner, a help, etc., which is what this whole surah is about, by the way. So we'll be revisiting this in shortly, inshallah ta'ala. But then we have here the number 3 point. So had there been two gods, Allah says nothing would have existed, because they just wouldn't have got to any kind of agreement. And the following ayah then goes on to further that argument. It says proof of dominance and subduing. The dominion of God indicates to no other divine being. Say if there were other gods along with him, with Allah, as they say, as they claim, then they would have sought a way against the Lord of the throne. They would have decided to say, right, If there's other gods, let's fight. I'm in charge. Humans can't, control themselves, but we shouldn't make the same analogy that God could or wouldn't. But nevertheless, if there were gods, Allah is actually raising the question: would they not then seek Godhead, Lordship, the ultimate power? What makes them lesser gods than God Himself? Right? Just making that up. Allah says in the Quran as well, Allah has not taken any son, nor has there ever been with Him any deity. If there had been, then each deity would have taken what it created, and some of them would have sought to overcome others. Every deity will be like, I created this, I created that. So that's your creation, that's your creation, that's your creation. Okay, like we're in competition now, who's created better, who's created more, and each one will try to outdo the other. That's not divinity, that's just human competition. That's a human concept that we're trying to now impose on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or divine realities. Exalted is Allah above what they describe. But they did believe that. People do believe there are gods that do different things, and they all share in the part of the godship, etc. That's a human way of explaining life, which is incorrect, which is not, acceptable on a logical perspective, on an argumentation perspective, let's say, and also on a Islamic theological monotheistic, Judeo-Christian as well, those that believe in monotheism and other traditions. It's not acceptable, and multiple gods just don't make sense. Allah, throughout the Quran, as you can see, brings this argument forward again and again and again. So then it moves on that point. Let's go further down. And it moves to ayah number 2. Before we move to ayah number 2, I want to mention a point here about Ahad. Qul huwallahu Ahad. Just finish with this one point from ayah number 2. Ahad comes from the root. So this is what I wanted to just talk Arabic wise. It's not too different from Wahid. It's different. So I want to explain the difference. So Ahad, this is the word we have. Ahadun, right? And we also have Wahid as the name of Allah. It doesn't occur in this surah, but it is in the Quran. Wahidun la sharika lahu, right? Wa ilahukum ilahun wahid. It's in many places of the Quran. Wahid. Wahid is the actual most common Arabic word for one. Okay? Allah is one. Ahad, you could say unique. It means one as well. It's from the root wahid as well. Wahada. Wahada. These three letters, waw, ha, dal, all refer to a oneness. This waw was transformed into a hamza for, morphological reasons. Morphology, Arabic sarf. We won't go into the morphological stuff today. So Tawheed comes from this. Tawheed, you got the waw there, you've got the ha, and you've got the dal at the end. Can you see that? You've got the waw, the ha, and the dal. So anything with wahada, it refers to oneness of something, or unity, or uniqueness, etc. So we've got two words that apply to Allah that have both the same meaning of oneness. Wahidun here, what they say wahidun here means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one as in He is one, no multiplicity. So one as in no multiplicity. That's what this one refers to. It goes back to what we've discussed. And Ahad refers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as no resemblance. There's no second God, like we had the same points we had before. So when you say Qul huwallahu ahad, He has no resemblance, they say this is stronger. Why is it stronger? If there's no resemblance, then surely there can't be a second. Whereas if there was no second, then does some of the creation have a little bit of resemblance, like we said? That's negated. So ahad is stronger, hence why it's not used as often. The stronger words tend to be, linguistically speaking, it's not used commonly. It's like I said, used in a negative way. It means absolutely nothing, by the way. Remember we said that. Lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Ma'had fi dar, nobody's in the house, right? It means an absolute negation of resemblance, of similarities, and that's why we explained it in that way. It completely negates everything. Wahid is not a number, by the way, just to make a point here. In Arabic, in language, and in Arabic itself, Wahid is not the first number. In Arabic, we have, in Arabic is the following. We have singular, dual, and plural. Okay, singular is 1, dual is 2, and plural is 3 plus. Okay, this is Wahid. This is not multiplicity. Right? This is beginning of multiplicity, right? Equals number. It's the beginning of number, because number is what? Equals multiplicity. One is not multiplicity, one is therefore not number. That's how we define it in Islam. Right? Arabic language is beautiful in that way because it has a dual. Number starts from here. Multiplicity starts from 2, and then you have a plural, which is 3 plus. Arabic is special because it has this dual concept, right? I don't know if it's any other language or not, but it's definitely in the Arabic language prior to Islam, and in the Quran, and in language today. It's just common. Arabic has a dual form, and it's natural in language. So if you learn Arabic, it's a natural thing you pick up. It's difficult because if you don't from an Arabic background, or native Arabic speaker, then dual is difficult to bring in. But once you get used to it, you kind of understand it. It's not a problem. But for a native speaker or somebody who's been brought up learning Arabic, it's second nature. That two, there's one, there's a dual which is 2, and then there's the plural. This dual is something quite normal. It's not weird or unique. It doesn't feel unique to native Arabic speakers or people who grow up around the language or get accustomed to it. It doesn't feel different or something special about the language. It is though. It is something special. So it was natural for the Arabs. It was natural part of their language naturally and intrinsically built in. But there's beautiful wisdoms, and you can see the significance of that when it comes to believing in number and oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's move on to ayah number 2 on our PDFs. So it says ayah number 2 to the bottom of that page. It says Allahu Samad. So we're going to talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now as As-Samad. So this now is also the name of the surah which we mentioned earlier. And we said we were going to talk about the sort of meaning of As-Samad. Right? As-Samad. Right? Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahus Samad. Right? Just thought I'd do a bit of calligraphy there for you. As-Samad, the dal should be a bit better than that. As-Samad. So what does Samad mean? And why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call himself As-Samad here? Because As-Samad, and this is only occurs in this surah. Only occurs in this surah. So the word Samad does not occur in any of the surah of the Quran. Okay? Hence this surah is called Surah As-Samad as well. So why was he using this surah for? As a reply to the disbelievers. This word captures, really defines as in explains to us, or to the kuffar especially, the initial response to the disbelievers, who Allah is. Or that meaning of removal of who Allah isn't as well, in a sense, right? So what are the meanings of As-Samad? Right? Does it mention that in this? Let's read this first. It says, Almighty Allah is self-sufficient and independent, Al-Ghani. So As-Samad, Al-Ghani are related in names, from being in need of anything, time, place, a creator, sustain, etc. He is the one called upon to fill everyone's needs. The creation is totally and entirely dependent upon him, yet he has no need of anything nor anyone. So that's what Samad means, that last sentence, right? The creation is totally and entirely dependent upon him, yet he has no need of anyone or anything, right? That's As-Samad. But in terms of the actual meaning of the word and how it applies, there are 3 opinions, or let's start a new page. There are 3 explanations. The first is the one الذي يسمد إليه في الأمور أي يلجأ إليه. So يسمد إليه, you go to for your needs, which is mentioned there. Go to for your needs. The Samad is the one you go to for your needs. Okay? Allahu Samad. And by the way, make a point here, right at the top still. Allahu As-Samad, right? Those of you who studied Arabic will have learnt that this is the subject. Just put an S under it. This is the predicate. This is what we're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're saying He is As-Samad. You will have learned in Arabic that the subject has to be definite or ma'rifah, and the predicate has to be indefinite or nakira. Those of you who study Arabic know what I'm talking about. Those of you who don't, just bear with me. Um, and as you can see here, or those of you who know Arabic, both the subject and the predicate are actually definite. Why is this definite? It's got al, the Samad. Why is this definite? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is definite. Right? We know who we're talking about. Right? And it's not a, it would definitely mean you know the one thing you're talking about. So there's a problem here. The khabar, the predicate is definite. What that means is not a problem. What that means is Allah is the only Samad. So this here indicates is the only one. So Allah didn't say He's the only Samad. This is the beauty of Arabic language, right? Allahu as-Samad. Allah is the Samad. That's it. There's no one else. Only Samad. I don't translate the word Samad because it doesn't need translating. Okay? He's the first meaning, the only one that you go to your needs for is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody else can fulfill your need. People, food, things may be a means to fulfilling your needs. But those means don't exist without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's decided to put means in place for your needs. But if He doesn't want to put the means there, there'll be no means. If He doesn't want to give you strength and satiation through your food and learning through your studying and knowledge, and He doesn't want to give you money through people, you'll be left, you could ask the whole world and get nothing, right? Because who is it that ultimately gives and provides? Allahu Samad. Right, this is the one you all need, that every single person has to go for their needs, right? So this is as-Samad, right? That's the first one. Number two, as-Samad is the one that does not have needs, or in one way does not eat or drink. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not eat, nor does He drink. Allah says in the Quran, وَهُوَ يُطْعِمْ وَلَا يُطْعَمْ. He feeds, but He's not fed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no needs Himself. So this is the ghani, this is the independent. Both meanings are in the word samad. So everything is needed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without any indications, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anything. Okay? He does not eat or drink, He does not have any needs. And Allah in the Quran talks about Isa alayhi salam and talks about His mother Maryam alayhi salam. Allah says, Mal Masih ibn Maryam illa Rasul. Masih, the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, Maryam, is not but a messenger. He's a messenger, in other words. قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلِ. Many messengers have gone before him. قَدْ خَلَتْ, they've passed away, they've been. وَأُمُّهُ صِدِّيقَةٌ. And his mother was a Siddiqa, a champion of truth, a very great lady. Siddiqa, the feminine form of Siddiq. Sayyid Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the highest rank companion. She was Siddiqa. She was truthful, champion of truth. Then Allah says something quite amazing. Then Allah says, Kana ya'kulani ta'am. They both used to eat food. Kana ya'kulani ta'am. You think, wow, but what's that got to do with anything, right? Isa, he's nothing but he's not but a messenger, and many messengers have gone before him. I like him. And his mother was a great lady. And they both used to eat food, by the way. Did you know that? Like, what's that got to do with the price of fish, as they say, right? Well, it's got something very important. It's not redundant in the Quran, right? If they used to eat, meaning they had to eat, they got hungry, they did. They're humans. Allah could provide for them without food, but you know what? Allah asked them to eat food to get strength. Wait a minute. How can that be God? Because by the way, the ayat is in a context of negating divinity from Isa alayhi salam, which obviously some people believe. So how can God eat? How can He be in need of? Some people believe Mary is also part of, or is divine as well, right? Maryam alayhi salam, that's what they believe. So Allah is saying, wait a minute, how can you attribute divinity to them when they eat food and they need of food? And when you eat food, what happens afterwards? You need to go call a nature. You need to relieve yourself. They did this as well. Allah doesn't say that in the Quran. Allah is wise and Allah is euphemistic, right? Beautiful, adab, very well presented arguments. Allah is saying, look, you eat, you have needs, go for a call of nature. God, what's that? I was reading about, I say ages ago, this is like maybe more than 10, even 15 years ago. Yeah, more than that, I think, as well. Like early 2000s. Came across a Christian convert, I think it was, to Islam. Gary Miller, I think his name was. Really long time ago. I've not revisited his work, so I don't know what he's like anymore or who he is. People change over time. But I think it was called a Muslim convert called Gary Miller. I'm mentioning the source because it was him who said it. He went to, I think, Australia or New Zealand, Australasia, whatever it is, right? And he met the people there, the Aboriginal people, and he asked them that, what is your God? Who do you believe, etc. And he was trying to make a point of monotheism. He's a Muslim, and they gave the name of their God. So they had a name for God in the Aboriginal um, people, the original people, the indigenous people of Australia, the natives. So they said, our name is, I don't know the word, I don't remember it. And so he said, what does it mean? You know, you've got a name, so names have meanings. What does it mean? They said, we don't really want to tell you. You might laugh. He goes, no, I won't laugh at the name of your God. That's disrespectful. You know, if it's got a funny meaning, I'll accept it. I won't laugh at it. You know, if it's amusing, it's amusing. I won't laugh at your God. So they goes, it's one of those that you might not really get. So he goes, no, tell me, I won't. And they said it means the one that doesn't. The rough meaning of the word is the one that doesn't go for a call of nature. Our God, the name it has, He has, their God, the name they've given to God, let's say, is the one that has no needs, in put it in a polite way, but literally means one that doesn't go for the call of nature. That's the kind of meaning the word had. So he said, look at that. Look at the natural state of people, these, Aboriginal, untainted. They haven't been, um, manipulated or tainted or influenced by technology, by belief systems. They've been left to themselves and the creation. And what do they believe about God? He has no need. He doesn't eat or drink. He doesn't go to the restroom. Right? Sorry to say that way, but that's what they actually believed. Of God must be like this. That's this intrinsic fitrah, as the Prophet called it, the fitrat Allah allati fatara an-nas alayha, the fitrah, the natural state, this untainted, original state of affairs that Allah created every single human on. The people had it. They had it amongst them because they weren't influenced by people. And this is what we believe. If somebody was born in this world and was never influenced by external factors such as technology, media, religions, etc., ideologies, that individual would come to believe in one God. That's what we believe. Some scholars believed it so much they said it's an obligation, right? Some of the Maturidi scholars and other groups said it's an obligation on every single human being to at least believe in oneness of a creator. That's it. Attributes, beliefs, actions, beyond that, they need revelation. But and we do believe this, that had somebody been left alone and just been given the world and no influences, he or she would believe in one God. We don't say it's an obligation. Majority of Muslim scholars didn't say it's an obligation, and therefore there's no accountability if he or she doesn't do that. But some of them said, no, there is an accountability of believing in, in God just from the world itself. There's actually a book written on this by one of the Muslim philosophers. I forgot the name of the book. I think it's called. I might be totally wrong, right? But I think I'm not come across the English for it, but it's Hay ibn Yaqzan. Those of you may have come to philosophical works or philosophers or read into this. This is a work. I think it's this work, Hay ibn Yaqzan. This is the name of a fictional person who grows up on an island, Tarzan, right? Fictional. And Hay ibn Yaqzan is not influenced by the world. And one of the Islamic philosophers, Farabi or Ibn Rushd, one of these guys, I don't remember, it's in the back of my head, this. I've not been to this for a long time. But he wrote a book, basically a hypothetical story that there's somebody, human being, grows up on an island. So it's a story, it's not just like he believes in God. No, he goes through all the different experiences and all the different thought processes and things that happen to this individual who grows up alone on an island that eventually lead him to believing in God, and why anybody and everybody who would have been in that situation would believe in God. It's quite a interesting read, and quite got a lot of good interesting um, points and arguments and discussions, and it's quite a engaging read. I think this is the name of the individual. It's a fictional name, I think. Hay ibn Yaqzan, he's born on an island, he grows up there. How is he born without a mother? I don't know. His mother might die or something. I don't remember the story, to be honest. Very long time ago, how he ended up there. Maybe he was just sailed out there like Musa al-Islam was put in the river, the basket, and was picked up by the wife of Fir'aun, right? Who knows how he got there, and stuff. But it's a fictional story, to be honest. But it's there. There's lots of lessons to learn from it, and how we believe in God, and we believe in these things, that He's the one we go to for our needs. He does not have any needs. Number three of this list. Sorry to go back to this list. The one of the one who's called Samad has no stomach. That's one of the meanings, right? La jawfa lahu. La jawfa meaning no hollowness, right? No internal parts. Allah's not in need of anything. Jawf is stomach as well. Your jawf is your stomach. Right? So these are all the different meanings that they could have. All are implied, but of course, the first one really is the one that Allah wanted. The scholars in the Tafasir tend to go with this one. In the Quranic exegesis, they say this is the one that Allah wanted to address the kuffar. He's Allah, the unique, the one you go to for your needs. The second one could apply, the one who's free of needs. They're both together really. As-Samad includes both. And many scholars have said that both these meanings are included in the word Samad as the word Samad itself, and not two separate meanings. So everything is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nothing is free of need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is in need, and He's free of need of everything else. I'm just thinking, is there anything to mention? So the next part I've got here, and obviously our next ayah continues into children of, being begotten and all this. So that's where we'll have another break now. So we'll stop here again for our second and final break, after which we'll come back for our final session, remainder of Surah Ikhlaas and Q&A as well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and welcome back to our third session on tafsir of Surah Al-Ikhlaas, Surah number 112 excuse me, of the Quran, and we are on ayah number 3, which is now talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's relationship to the creation, if you can say that, or lack of it, and how He differs and is unique therefore, and not like the creation. So as a response to the question of the polytheists, obviously they had this false concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being related to things, and therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to sort this out, kind of answer this false notion and belief that different groups had. So it mentions here, it says lam yalid wa lam yulad. That's what we're talking about. Allahu Samad was the last ayah. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. This is ayah number 3 of Surah Al-Ikhlas. Lam yalid means he did not give birth. Lam yalid. He has not begotten, i.e. a child. He did not give birth. Yalid is literally the word for walada. Yalidu means to give birth, to produce something from yourself. Beget. So he did not beget. He has not begotten a child. Walam yulad. Yulad is the passive form of yalid. So yalid means to produce something or give birth. Yulad means to be born, or to be begotten, as the translation is probably going to say below. So Allah is neither does He produce from Himself. So His creation is not that one of producing from His self, His being, like I said, which we can't describe or understand. So there's no, therefore, if you have something that comes from yourself, it would be your child, right? It would be your son or daughter, and you'd be the mother or father. And this is in creation. Everything is produced from something else, right? Of course, the initial creation of everything was from Allah, kun fayakun. But then after that's an act of creation, not of begetting. So that you might say, well, Allah created us in the beginning. Yeah, that's not begetting something. That's creating, originating. Kun fayakun is not part of Him. That becomes separate to Him or is produced from Him. It's just something, like we said, totally contradictory to Allah. It doesn't exist on the same time. There's no time for Allah to exist on. There's no shape, space, coordinates that Allah has, that then the creation is now in contrast to. This is totally separate, the act of creation. So who claimed, or what beliefs were out there that God has children or has sons or something like that? So it says here, the Jews said Uzair is the son of God. وَقَالِ الْيَهُودُ أُزَيْرٌ ibn Allah. It's in the Quran. And one of the surahs of the Quran mentions that some of the Jews say, we don't say this, we don't believe in this, we only believe in one God and no sons of God, right? The story that I've read about Uzair, who's a prophet, and we believe in him as a prophet of God, is that he was after Musa al-Islam, I believe, and before Isa al-Islam in that time period, and he had memorized the Torah. This is the story I read, I can't remember, a long time ago as well. I've not recently, I tried to find it for this, but I couldn't. I just found the fact that it says here the Jews say this in the ayah. Let's see if I can find the ayah. وَالْيَهُودُ فِي قَلِمْ أُزَيْرٌ ibn Allah. He doesn't mention the ayah number, but he quotes the ayah of the Quran. And of course we know the Christians or the Nasara say Isa is the son of Allah, and as I mentioned there, the polytheists of Makkah and in that time, they said that Allah has daughters, and they regarded the angels to be daughters of Allah. Right? All three are incorrect. But the story of Uzair is that he memorized the Torah, and the Torah in that time, in his time, was lost. So the written form was lost, and it was rewritten from the memory of Uzair. So Uzair was the one that kind of brought back and kind of revised or re-established the Torah in the new written form from his memory. And the Jews, or the group of Jews that were there at his time, called him the Son of God for that reason. So maybe they didn't believe him as a son of God and divinity, but they believed that God had sent him for this special reason, etc. It's mentioned. This is in the Christian tradition, this or the Judeo-Christian traditions and reports. It's not something Muslims wrote or something. So that is mentioned, that a group of them, and this did occur. So hence that is being referred to by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. And of course we know throughout the Quran in several places the Isa al-Islam is mentioned, and the fact that some of his followers, some, not all again, of his followers believed he was the son of God and that kind of thing, right? Which we talked about previously as well. And in the Quran, it's also mentioned that the kuffar in a few places, and often when he mentions the Quran, that Allah has taken a walada, lam yattakhidh walada, he has not taken a child. Walad doesn't mean son. Walad means child, begotten, a child, right? It can be a boy or a girl. When the ayah comes in the Quran in several places, it refers to all of these three things. That some said Allah has a son, and some said Allah has a daughter. All of them are wrong. Allah has no children. So walad means child, not son. And when Allah used the word walad in this context, He's referring both to male and female children. Allah does not have either. Allah doesn't have children, full stop. So that's something to take note of. Then it says, having a child is negated in many places in the Quran. As an answer to those who falsely attribute a son to Allah, He says, فَاطِرِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, originator of the heavens and the earth. أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ وَلَدٌ, how could he, how, أَنَّا, not كَيْفَ, how, أَنَّا is a more emphatic way of saying how on earth, right? How on earth can he have a son? وَلَمْ تَكُنْ لَهُ صَاحِبَةٌ, and he doesn't even have a partner, صاحبة, consort. When He created all things, and He is the knower of all things, right? So to have a child, to have a offspring, you need a partner. You need somebody to commingle with, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no such thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of such a thing. How can He therefore have children? And also to point out here that in one ayah he says, قَالُوا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ وَلَدًا, they say Allah has taken a son. سُبْحَانَهُ هُوَ الْغَنِيُّ, glory be to Him, free of any blemish be He, glory and blessed be His name. هُوَ الْغَنِيُّ, He is the independent. So you see the previous word here, as-samad, and how it continues in the same kind of theme of Allah not being in need. Because having a child is a need, right? Having a child, you might say, no, you want a child for enjoyment. Oh, well, there you go. You need a child for enjoyment. That's a need. Enjoyment is a need. Enjoyment is like a internal whim and desire that you want to fulfill. Not if you don't want to say, oh, I don't need a child to help me with my life or my work or income or family support. I want a child to enjoy having a child, to have the comfort. Yeah, that's comforts or needs, right? Desires and enjoyment, all these are human needs. They don't apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't need to take solace with the created, with the sun. That's just not applicable to divinity, like we said before. So Allah has no needs, and therefore He has no child. He didn't create us out of a need, therefore. Right? Allah, and Imam Tahawi in his Aqidah says what? Khaliqun bila haja. Allah is the creator without a need to create, without a need for His creation. Bila haja. There was no need or want or desire of Allah to create, so that He needed it to become, He was lonely, let's say, or something like that. That's human emotions. We can't superimpose them upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, it wouldn't have been lonely to be Allah alone. No, we can't do that. Human emotions, human brains, the intellect, the mind limits its thoughts to that process. And yes, we would be lonely. Yes, we would be quite miserable and, feeling neglected and, all sorts of things, right? If we were alone, it's not nice for a human to think that way or a human to be that way. But that's a human. So you can't apply human attributes to the Creator. So He's not in need of a son. He's not in need of a partner. He doesn't have these things because they are actually weaknesses. They may be strengths for human beings. A partner completes you, a child gives you strength, but they are weaknesses for divinity, right? They're actually part of making our weaknesses, removing our weaknesses, right? Making us stronger through the fact that we have these things. Yes, that is the case, but that shows a weakness prior to becoming stronger. That shows a shortcoming or a lack of something that's been fulfilled, which is not the case for the Almighty, the Divine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then it says, وَلَمْ يُولَدْ, which is the second part of this ayah. He is not born of a father or a mother. He has no originator. He is the pre-eternate. All creation is contingent. So pre-eternal means He was without time, i.e. without beginning. Anything that's yulad has a beginning, and it's produced from something else, like we said, right? Like you get a generator, it goes around, right? Generator, by the way, in Arabic is called muwallid. It's the same root letters, walada, muwallid. Right? It goes around. That rotation produces energy, electricity now. Right? Generators that they work on petrol. You put that in, you get a motor. Motor turns around a belt. A belt has connected to like an energy source that produces charge. Those science and mechanics and electronics know exactly how it works. I just know the rough principles. And it produces electricity that you can then channel into some kind of, object or device like the light bulbs or your sockets, and you can run things on it, right? And that's how life works. Humans have discovered that. That's called tawleed, productivity or generation of energy, right? Allah did not come from anything like that. He wasn't produced. Because you need something to produce. If Allah had a beginning, who decided to create Him or produce Him in any way, shape or form? Nobody. Nobody said kun fayakun for Allah either. Because there was nobody there. It was Allah. So there was nobody before Allah because there was no beginning before Allah. That's weird. Again, the human mind cannot fathom certain things. And again, to think of something without a beginning or there's no before for something is difficult. It's very difficult, in fact. And therefore, something that, may not register at the moment. And you might be thinking, what you're on about, no beginning of something. So what the scholars and, one of the discussions in theology is the pre-eternalness of Allah, this very concept here, and the qidam of Allah, huwa al-awwal huwa al-akhir in the Quran. Long discussions on this, very, very controversial topic, because some philosophers, non-Muslim philosophers, definitely said it, and some Muslim philosophers are accused of saying it as well, that not only Allah but the universe has no beginning either, because they wanted to give, they couldn't figure out a way the universe had a beginning. They didn't want to believe in God giving it a beginning, basically. So they kind of said it's pre-eternal. It's a long discussion, but it's a mistake. Orthodoxy and just generally monotheists, including Jews and Christians, don't believe in mostly, like I said, everyone has the pockets of ideas. They believe in a independent God from the universe that wasn't forced into. So in a sense, Allah was forced to create the universe because it exists. No, we don't believe that. It's created by choice. One of the attributes of Allah we believe in is choice or irada. He's got a will. And He chose to create the universe. It wasn't forced upon Him. So the universe is not pre-eternal. He is pre-eternal. He has no beginning or originator. Everything else was part of His. Everything else is contingent, as they said, has time and place. There is therefore no lineage from all aspects. He is the first and was when there was none besides Him. As the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah was and there was none besides Him. كان الله ولم يكن معه شيء. Sahih Bukhari, sound hadith. I believe that's what the reference is. I can't see the bottom of the page. It says in the reference number 9, Al-Bukhari. Yep. So if you look in that collection, you will find a hadith of this wording. كان الله ولم يكن معه شيء. It's a famous relation. Or as the Prophet ﷺ said. The scholars have added, so this statement comes with the addition, but it's not from the Prophet ﷺ, it's often added. وهو الآن على ما عليه كان. وهو الآن على ما عليه كان. And he is now as he was then. So there's nothing besides Allah now? Yep. There's nothing besides Allah. Allah was, the creation didn't change Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah didn't become stronger, weaker, more helped, more worshipped, more benefited. Nothing changed. Allah's perfect. If He's improved by creating, okay, what was He before He improved? Lacking something, needing something to improve Him. There's no such thing as improvements for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He was perfect in His divine attributes before He created. When He created, nothing changed for Him. Of course, it changed for the creation, and reality is that we're here. But for Him, nothing changes. He doesn't improve or decrease, increase. He's not emotional to a change in feelings. It's not God, basically, right? It's hard to fathom God and the concept of the divine. It's not within human capabilities, intellect to kind of reach that far. Hence, we just learn about Allah from these attributes from Revelation, what He's told us about Himself. He's the kind, He's the merciful, and we can relate to those kind of things, and we build a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that basis. And hence, theology is important as the foundation of our religion, that we get it right. And hence, this surah is very important because it kind of establishes that in our hearts and minds. And they say the more you recite Surah Ikhlaas, the more it gives you Ikhlaas, the more it fortifies your tawheed and your beliefs. And it really gives you that strength of faith and that understanding of God Almighty. And really, it's enough. If you just attach yourself to this surah, rather than going into lots of discussions and proofs and arguments about God and creation. As a Muslim, you believe in God, recite this surah. Recite La ilaha illallah often, and recite this surah often, and you'll fortify your faith, and you'll bring Ikhlaas into your worship, and sincerity, and you'll become firm, inshallah ta'ala. So this is a reply, of course, to the polytheists about the question. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He wasn't born, or was he? He didn't give birth, nothing, and he's not born of anyone. He's not got a lineage like you're claiming. So Allah is, of course, replying to the question that they are referring to, or they asked. So Allah is not born, contingent, comes in time and place. He is the first without a beginning to His existence, and He is the last without an end to His existence. He is as He was when there was nothing, and He will never change because that's His divine perfection. He does not have a second, a companion. He does not have anyone who resembles Him, and He has no one who can be even like Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's very important to remember. Then we move on to ayah number 4, alhamdulillah, the fourth and last ayah of Surah Al-Ikhlaas, which is وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, which means, and there is no one that has any, literally actually means there is no one who is equivalent or equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the translation, there's no likeness, similarity to Allah the Exalted, right? Lam yakun, there is no one that has been, let's say, it negates being. Lahu, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, kufuwan. Walam yakun lahu kufuwan. If you start with kufuwan, it'd be fine as well. Walam yakun ahadun kufuwan. So ahadun is not necessarily required to be said. You can say walam yakun lahu kufuwan. There is no one that has any kufa. So kufa or kafa'a, which this word comes from, means suitability. It's the same word actually used in nikah, in weddings, when you have a suitor. So you say, is this person a kufa? The same word. And is there kafa'a? Is there suitability between them, like in terms of income, in terms of background, in terms of education, in terms of culture? Will they get along with each other? The scholars differ of whether this is all of that is regarded or not in Islam, and how do we deal with matching people for marriage, etc., lineage, etc. It's a long discussion, but the concept and the discussion is kafa'a. It's the same word here. So what basically we're trying to get is two co-equals, two very similar people, that this person is equivalent to that person, and therefore the marriage, all being well, should be successful. I mean, we've done our part of trying to find a good match. The rest is down to the individuals. Even if you find perfect matches, they don't perfect There's no single perfect match. You have to make marriage work, whatever you are, whoever you are. And anybody can make it work. It's just individuals and people, but it's harder to make it work with certain people. Yes, so the match makes it easier, makes it more conducive. So that's the kufr here, right? Just sorry to talk about nikah. We can do another seminar, webinar on that, inshallah. But here it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the kufr also means, another meaning of the word is your colleagues at school, they're your equals. I mean, if you were the similar abilities and so forth. Somebody you have the same ability, same description, same age, same strength. Obviously, if your colleagues at school were, a foot taller than you and had big muscles, they're not your kufr. So kufr really means like equal in all ways. That's probably a way of saying it. Like it's suitable and fits in every way. It's kufr. It fits together. It's a perfect match, as we say, idealistically we say. So there's no one who is like that. There's no one who, absolutely no one. So again, negation. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. So this ahad at the end, and the beautiful thing about it I didn't actually talk about, is the qalqalas at the end of every surah, at the end of every ayah, sorry. At the end of every ayah we've got a dal. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أحد. This is one of the reasons why ahad is at the end, because you could have said وَلَمْ يَكُنْ أَحَدٌ لَهُ كُفُوًا. You could have put ahad first. In normal, it's a subject. Subject normally comes first. We're talking about, there is no one that has the likeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Or his likeness, or is equivalent to him. So there's no one. The one thing is what we're talking about. We're negating it, or we're negating anything from that one to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is everything. When we negate that one, we mean everything. There is no one. There is nothing. لَمْ يَكُنْ أَحَدٌ كُفُوًا لَهُ. There is nothing. But what do we mention first? We mention him. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ. Why do you mention Allah? Because it's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah wants the attention of the listener, the polytheist first, to think about Allah first. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ. There's no one to him. What? Kufuwan. Ahad. Absolutely anybody. So the first thing you got to put in your mind is Allah. Then the second thing is similarities. Absolutely no one. Again, the whole concept of negation. By the way, you might think, this has been a concept of today. It's important. It's very, very important, because our faith is based on a negation and then an affirmation. Obviously, affirmation as well. La ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I bear witness there is no one worthy of worship except Allah. So there has to be a negation first. Now, the important thing is, we're not saying there is no God but Allah. There's only one God out there. That's the reality, right? Whether we want to accept it or not, whether people accept it or not. Us saying there is no one worthy of worship or there is no God except Allah doesn't make it a reality. So why are we saying it then? What does it saying it do for us? It establishes, or it reminds us and establishes in our hearts that belief. So saying La ilaha illallah is an exercise for us to recognize there is no one out there that is worthy of worship except Allah. Everything you see, don't be fooled. Don't be beguiled by creation. This is going to happen more and more as we get to the end of time. And the Prophet said this at the end of times, the signs of polytheism will come back into this ummah. And he didn't necessarily mean people get an idol and worship it, but they'll start relying on other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They'll start thinking their mobile phone can help them, their bank balance can help them. The lesser form of shirk is called riyah, or showing off. Probably called that shirk. He said that shirk will come back. And people will stop relying on Allah and start relying on things around them. Until the end, they'll do outright shirk. Yes, there'll be outright shirk going on. Why? We're going to forget the meaning of La ilaha, the first part of the Shahada. There's no one worthy of worship except Allah. There's no one that can help you except Allah. No one has true power except Allah. There's no one that decides anything except Allah. There's no one that provides except Allah. Illallah. Right? So we need to always have this root and source of faith as Tawheed, as a negation of any power or ability except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The affirmation is what we need to put into our hearts. We take everything else out of our hearts. So this is why they say La ilaha illallah. You move away from your heart, you say La ilaha, and you move away from your heart, which is slightly on the left hand side, so you move to your right. So you're moving everything from your heart that's other than Allah outside, away. La ilaha. And then obviously you believe in Allah, you want Allah to be your focus, illallah, except Allah, and then you want to, Allah is not in our hearts, right? Although metaphorically speaking, we say Allah is in our hearts, and in our hearts we believe in Allah, etc. Allah is not in a place, time, etc. But that's again the same concept here. We want the thought of Allah in our hearts. We want to be aware of Allah in our hearts and our beings and all the time. So saying La ilaha illallah, reading Surah Ikhlas constantly produces that awareness, produces that strength of faith. Right? It reminds us constantly there is nothing out there that can help you, nothing out there to provide for you. They only provide for you, they only help you, they're only able to do what they're doing because Allah has placed them and made this system. So in a system, you can't bypass the system of cause and effect. But the system is Allah's system and He causes it to work. And He's asked us to go through it to get to Him. And we're going through the system. But who is ultimately in charge? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing, don't be beguiled, right? And I was saying at the end of time, people do outright shirk, Dajjal. Normally people will believe in Dajjal, right? Somebody who claims to be God, somebody who claims to, do things that God does and show them, or deceive them, right? And do these kind of tricks and be treacherous in a sense, but like really cheat them of themselves by resurrecting people back to life and getting people to talk and showing them paradise and hell. And the Prophet warned us of this. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by this. Don't be deceived by this. Your Dajjal is one-eyed and your Lord is not one-eyed. Dajjal is defective, created human. Your Lord is not defective. He has no blemishes, has not got one eye. The word is not created being that you believe in as God. He's the divine that is not like any created being that you believe in to be your God, your one worthy of worship for you. Your tawheed is applied or directed to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the danger that we are falling into as ummah, and as something that is going to happen inevitably. And there will be people that believe in Dajjal. That's that kind of concept. It's mentioned in the signs of the end of times that this will develop slowly until the end, where you have Dajjal and people outright believe in God. Even mentions that people take idols again. So we ask Allah for protection from that. I just read what it says here. It says, there is no likeness or similarity to Allah. Allah the exalted. Allah has no similarity to creation in His divine essence, attributes, and actions. We already mentioned that. This ayah emphasizes the oneness of Allah. If something was similar to Him, He would no longer be one, right? So, lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. There's nothing that has any likeness or anything that can be similar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just got a note here, I'm reading from a tafsir, that the word kufuwan can be read in several different ways. Kuf'an, kufu'an, kufuwan, right? This is the kufuwan is the one we read, the normal recitation of the majority, but there are different ways of reciting this word. Kuf'an is another common one. Al-kufa is, even in Arabic language, is common and it's the same word. It's got different pronunciations. The pronunciation of words can differ. So that concludes what I wanted to share regarding Surah Al-Ikhlas. And as a final sort of summary, just to kind of go as an overview, Surah Ikhlas is a very virtuous surah of the Quran. It's probably the second surah we all learn in our lives as Muslims from a young age, or when you convert to Islam, etc. It's a powerful surah. It's a surah that contains one of the core concepts of our faith, a third of our faith, a third of the Islam, which is Tawheed. It's equivalent in some reports or interpretations to a reward of the third of the Quran. It's a surah that was revealed in response to the kuffar of Makkah, or in some reports, the Jews of Medina that asked about the lineage of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is your God? What is He made of? Where is He from? And this was the reply. We learned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unique, not like the creation, has no needs. Everything else is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As-Samad. I heard from one of my teachers that if you recite Surah Al-Ikhlas 200 times a day, you will be able to survive on one morsel of food for 40 days. This has been done, right? One morsel of food, you're fasting, right? Most of us are fasting. One morsel of food, don't eat for 40 days. How can you do that? By the way, days of people have done many days, right? I don't know if anybody's done 40, but it's reported this has been done. Surah Ikhlas. Why? What's the secret of Surah Ikhlas? As-Samad, you see. The word As-Samad means the one that has no needs and everybody else is in need of Him. So if you recite that name often, or that surah that contains that name often, it impacts you. So one of the impacts of Surah Ikhlas is independence that it builds in you, right? Doesn't mean you don't need creation and you live alone, but it builds that sense of, that being able to, one of the meanings of As-Samad is resilience as well. Because it brings that resilience in you and the ability to do things and maintain things and be independent. Of course, the core concept and meaning of the surah is the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Him not having a partner, not having a need, or not having a child, or being born or produced as a response to the kuffar, and how we need to have that as a core concept and belief in our lives and base our worship on this, inshaAllah ta'ala. So that concludes our seminar. Jazakumullah khairan. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.